Hi everybody, thanks for watching the videos. Obviously you've just seen the first two videos go through of me actually doing the sketch and the outline, and at this stage now we're at the stage for the colouring in process. So one of the things I just want to mention about outlining is you need to use a pen that is not going to leak when you put your alcohol markers on here. So I use the Copic multi-liner, or I use the Chameleon liner, pretty much because if you use any ink over the top of it, they don't smudge, they don't wipe, they don't start bleeding or anything. Sorry, don't know what happened there. Camera went a bit welly up. So another thing I like to use is have a piece of paper on the side so you can test all your colours. And for colouring, one of the things that I quite often get asked is, do I have a plan when I'm colouring? And the honest answer is no. I just see how I feel and then just go for it. So first thing I'm going to do is put a halo around the outside of it. So I'm going to use a purple because I like darker colours around the outside, because once you get your little white line from your gel pen around the outside, what it does is it just lifts the piece off the page. So what I'm using here is I'm using a Sharpie. So these videos are all going to be normal speed, so they might be a bit longer than normal, but it just gives you a better idea of the process, what I'm actually doing. So the thing with this paper is, if you look, it has a bit of a bleed on it, so it has a bit of an absorption problem. What's happening as I'm colouring, what it's doing is it's expanding slightly. So doing the outline first on this kind of paper. So if you're using a cheaper paper, this might happen. If you're using the alcohol marker paper, you won't get this. You won't get this sort of spreading out effect. So again, with this, it's just practice, because you get used to what the paper does, you get used to your pens, you get used to your limitations on what you can do. So you've just got to keep just bashing on at it and just trying your best with it as well. We get quite a lot of comments about, why do you do a double pager? Because you get this little fold down the middle. The honest answer is because I like them. I like the double pager because what it does is it pushes you a little bit. So if you're just doing a piece on a piece of paper, what you'll do is you'll just do that piece on the paper. Now with a double pager, what it does is it sort of encourages you to think a little bit harder, because you've got to fill that space in all around here, and try and be a little bit more creative with what you're doing. So for me, I like the double pages because I just think it just gives you that little bit of a kick up the backside to do a little bit more and try a little bit more. Now a lot of the stuff that I do is probably very similar as well. Love bubbles, love clouds, love all that old school stuff, because obviously it's where I started, it's what I've always done. You know, I've enhanced a little bit with what I do, but to be honest with you, I always tend to go back to what I do. I like trying new things as well, and I think I've put a couple of comments on people's pages. There's a young chap called Ghoul who I did an outline for, and you saw that on one of the other videos as well, though he's made some really positive comments saying that my work's inspired him, which is fabulous, because that's the whole point of this channel really, is just to give people that little spark and see whether you can do something different, or if you're just starting out, or whether you've done it for a long time. Like I say, I'm not into spray cans. I have done spray cans before. I didn't particularly like it, but obviously when I started it was all crappy car paint and things like that. None of this lovely paint that you get now. And to be honest with you, I was never particularly that good with a can. I didn't really enjoy it that much, but I enjoy the Blackbooking because I think it gives you a bit of breathing space. I think it gives you a bit of thinking time, and actually it's just, you know, gives you something to do. So as you can see now, that purple halo around the outside, what it's doing is it's drawing your eye in. So if you use a darker colour for your halo, so if you use a red, sometimes black is quite good, because if you use a black around the outside and then you edge it off with the white banding on your gel pen at the end or your Posca pen at the end, what that does is that just lifts your picture from the page. So I work fairly rapidly on this, to be honest with you. I'm not a particularly tidy drawer. I get bored so quickly, and to be honest with you, when I'm doing these sorts of things, my head is always thinking about the next piece along, what I'm going to do next. A lot of the times with what I'm doing, I don't think about what I'm doing until I'm doing it. But if you notice on my pictures, I always start here. So all my drawings start from this. Whatever I do, you know, I've seen some people who start their pieces from the middle, which I think is pretty amazing, because I just don't know how you'd start there and work back that way and that way. But mine, I always start here. It's a bit of a habit, really, and quite unusual. A lot of artists, a lot of graffiti artists and artists in general tend to be left-handed, because left-handed is quite a creative hand, I believe. And I'm right-handed, which to some people is quite weird. So purple's on. Now I think what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to do the outside first. So I'm going to use Sharpies for the outside, purely because I've got some really nice contrasting colours. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some little shadows and little bubbles on here. So with this, what you're doing is you're effectively just building your outside, making your outside look a bit cool. I've got these little clips on here because what it does is it just holds the pages down, because otherwise the pages want to have that thing where they want to just bounce back, which is a bit of a pain. So those clips, they're only a few pounds. You can get them from Hobbycraft, you can get them from Amazon. But if you're doing double pages, they're an absolute godsend, because they just stop your work bouncing all over, and just keeps everything intact. So again, like I say, I've got no plans of what colours I'm going to use. Sorry about this, people. This camera keeps stopping out, which is really cheesing me off today, to be honest. So I have to keep stopping it and starting. I don't know why it does that. I'm using a GoPro Hero 7, so if anybody knows why that's doing that, stick a comment below, because it's a massive help. Because for some reason, and to be honest with you, I've got cheaper Amazon batteries which I bought, which were really inexpensive and came with a charger. Never have any problems with them, but it's always the GoPro battery that just seems to just cut off. So anyway, if you are starting off with these channels, the GoPros are absolutely perfect for filming, because you can get some really good mounts. The quality of the actual imagery on it is really clear. You've got the image stabilization, you've got the hyper speed thing. So when you're doing the speedy up fast book sessions and things like that, though, they're absolutely brilliant for that, because it's I think it's called hyperlapse or something. The hyperlapse just gives a smooth edge when you're going faster as well, so you don't get all that jaggedy jerky motion and things like that. So it's just like a quite smooth thing. So as I said before, my son does all the editing, and he's trying to get some different music. So I apologise if some of the music on the videos is similar, but if you know anything about YouTube, there's lots of copyright stuff that you've got to be careful of, and you've got to be careful about what music you put on there, because you get bans and stuff like that. And obviously we've only just started, really, and I don't think I'd want to be taken off the channel straight away just for the sake of using some music that I shouldn't be using. But he's found a decent app where it's got all copyright free music, so he's trying to bring on some extra music on there just to give it a bit of a different feel to it as well. So I think what I'm going to do with these outline clouds is I'm going to use purple. So if you see in here, you've got these little white marks on there, though. That's just the alcohol settling. So what you'll find with anything with an alcohol marker, whether you're using Sharpies, chameleons, spectrums, anything like that, what you will find is the ink will settle. So when you first do it, it might appear as patchy, and then what will happen is so it'll settle, and then what you'll find is afterwards it will comfortably just sit there. Now the other thing I've got with this book as well though is you quite often see this little bit around here. So what I do is I always put a piece of paper underneath this, because this paper, and I'll show you at the end, bleeds really badly. So what happens is the ink, because it's quite thick, will sit there and just eat through the paper, and it basically goes right the way through the other side, so you can end up ruining about 3 pieces of paper. Sorry, I'm just going to move that back. Eat through the paper, and you'll end up going through about 3-4 pieces of paper just while you're colouring it in. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to put one more colour on this, and then I'm going to finish the edging off with black, purely because I always like black on there, because I think it just gives a really nice contrast to it. I'm just figuring out what blue I'm going to use on here, because blue and purple is always a good mix. Now you'll get people who will say, you know, I'll use this colour wheel and contrasting colours and things like that. Fabulous if you want to do that, but I will just go with instinct and do what I think looks good. Like I said on the previous video, never been to art college, never studied art. This was purely, I started doing this in about 1984. Saw a film called Beat Street with my friend Mark. Big shout out to Mark Sheridan, who long time school friend now, and I remember him coming into school the next day and saying, did you see this film? And it was like, no, I've never seen it. So I went and found it. Back in those days, obviously there was no internet, it was all videos and things like that, so we managed to get an old VHS video of it, and we watched it, and it was just like, blew me away. And then a film called Style Wars came out, which if any younger ones haven't seen it, go on YouTube and search for it. I mean, for somebody who's quite young, you probably look at it and think, Jesus, that's quite old-fashioned, but you know, for people who are as old as me, it was what started it all, really. And that was pretty much where a lot of this art started. So I'm not trained, I've not studied. It was just, you know, myself and my friend Mark who started doing this, and we had another friend called Colin. And Colin was an amazing guy. He was just very quiet, very unassuming, but he could just do some amazing work. I can remember seeing Colin coming into school with some of his work sometimes, and he just used to show us this stuff, and we'd be like going, how the hell have you done that, Colin? You know, it was just, when somebody just really inspires you and just does some incredible work. Now, fortunately, Colin took his life a couple of years ago, and the sad thing is though is my friend Mark had met up with him, because obviously I'd moved away from the area, so Mark met up with Colin, and Colin still had some of our really early art from back in the 80s, which I'd have loved to have seen, but unfortunately it's because of the circumstances we're never going to see that again though. So, but you know, great guy, really inspirational, and it was from that we started doing all this. Like, I remember my friend Mark buying some acrylic paints from an art shop in Gillingham, where we used to live, and he came back with this piece of art. I still remember it. It was about 1985-86, and it said hip hop on it, and he painted it using acrylic paints. And I can remember thinking, how the hell have you done that? And he just said he couldn't afford some paintbrushes at the time, so what he did is he did the background with the paint and his fingers. And but this work, I'd love to be able to see this work still though, because it was just absolutely incredible. So from there I started dabbling with acrylic paints. I bought these little pots for a few quid and started using those paints. And like I say, it's probably from there that it's always been something that I've done. I think I give it up maybe for about 10-15 years when the kids were a little bit younger, so I stopped painting and drawing about 10-15 years, and then about 4 or 5 years ago I picked up the pens again and had another go, and started just doodling again and started using a few pens. I started off with Sharpies because I wasn't really sure whether I was going to continue it or do it properly, and then I bought a few Spectrum Noirs. So the Spectrum Noir pens, as I've said to you before, are absolutely superb, and yeah, and then it's just gone back from there really. And you know, from that, as I was drawing, my son said, why don't we film it, why don't we do a channel? Which I was a bit like, okay, I'm not sure whether that was something that I wanted to do, but we'd give it a go, and here we are. So you see now, I've got the purple halo down on there, I've got the purples on there, and I've got the blues. So I'm using all this in Sharpie. So again, if you look at what I said on the previous video where I was talking through the pens, you don't need to spend a lot on pens to get a good result. Sharpies give a superb quality, a really good finish, nice coverage, good thick colour. There's a good range of contrasting colours, so you've got, you know, some light colours and the darker colours if you want to layer it, and you know, you can just get some really nice effects with the Sharpies. And I like Sharpies. I think, you know, you always find they're on an offer, so you can always find them at a good price. You know, if you're younger or you're starting out and you're not sure whether you want to carry it on, you can't go wrong with a pack of Sharpies. And if you decide that, you know, the art isn't for you and you don't want to carry it on, you've always got some pens that'll come in for something, you know, right on your freezer bags or something like that. So what I'm doing now is I'm just putting down the slightly darker colours. So what I do when I'm colouring on here is always go from light to dark, because obviously if you put a dark colour down, you put a light colour on top of it, it'll just disappear. So, you know, I'm sorry if I keep saying my son was saying I say a lot, but it's a strange thing when you're talking on this video, because I'm in the house on my own, got the cats with me. In fact, one of the cats is sitting here looking at me, and it's if you've never done it before, it's quite a strange feeling sitting there talking through to people who aren't there. And you know, I'm trying to talk through and concentrate at the same time with colouring, but people say fellas can't multitask. Yeah, you get it. I find it really hard to talk and colour at the same time. So this is one of the real pain in the bum bits here, is when you've got to do that little edge, but so you'll see. So you probably see quite a different image from here now as well. But what I'm going to do with this is, so although I've put these colours down first, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, so I made a bit of a mistake there though, but if you make a mistake, don't worry about it, it's your work, you can do whatever you want, you know, and you make it whatever you want. So you might see a mistake and you might think, oh god, you know, I've made a real balls of that, but just do whatever you want. If you make mistakes, you make mistakes, you know, you will. The whole point of making mistakes, and I've said this to people before when I get asked questions online, and as I said before, I always try and answer them, is if you make a mistake, get over it. You know, you've just got to learn by these mistakes, and you've just got to, you know, and making mistakes is what makes your stuff good, you know. And I've done some stuff and I look at it and I absolutely hate it, and then what happens is people come on and go, oh, I love that, and it's really weird, because art is one of those things where, you know, for some people you can look at your work, and I find most artists are probably very self-critical anyway, but you can look at your work and you can absolutely hate it, and somebody thinks it's absolutely great. So, you know, so all I'm doing here now is I'm just going around these. So obviously it gives me the bit to colour in between. So I'm using the edge of the pen just to give it a thicker line there, just to go on that though. So it'd be nice if you're obviously watching these videos, if you are finding these helpful, or you think, you know what, there's something that I'd really like to see, you know, or you've seen something on the Instagram page that you'd like to see, or something that you think you're not sure of how I've done it, or how I've come up with a certain effect or contrast or whatever, just send me a message, because like I say, we will try and answer everything. It does get hard at sometimes because obviously we're working as well, you know, this is just something we do as a sideline. But if I can answer your questions, I will answer your questions. Right, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pause this for a minute because obviously you're going to be bored out your mind when I colour this black, and then I'll come straight back. Right, so back into it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put some contrasting colour on here. So where I've got that lighter blue, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some smaller clouds inside of a different colour, and what that'll do is that will just give it a bit of depth. Put a couple of bubbles in there because I absolutely love a good bubble. So what I'm doing there when I'm doing that is just outlining the halo on that, just to give it, again, it's just contrasting the colours, it's building the colours and giving it a bit of depth, a bit of structure. I mean, you could leave that on its own like that and it'd be absolutely fine, but I just think adding the extra colours in there and putting those lines in there just gives you a little bit more oomph to your piece. So you can see on there, compared to everything else, it just looks that little bit more effective and gives it a bit more of a substantial look to it as well. And what it does is it basically just takes the difference between the lighter and the darker colour and it just cleans those lines up a little bit. Okay, again, if you don't want to do that, you do whatever you want. If you can pick something up from these videos and it gives you a bit of inspiration, great. If it doesn't, absolutely fine with that either way. You know, your comments are really important to us. You know, and I know we've had a couple of people where you get the odd person on there who dislikes everything on there though, because it's like they're doing it for shits and giggles, and it's like, okay, whatever. If that's how you want to be, that's absolutely fine. I appreciate the comments. I will deal with comments on there as well though, but every now and then you will get somebody who will just put a comment on there just to be clever, and just because they've got nothing better to do in their life. Unfortunately, I think that's part and parcel with YouTube, from what I can gather from speaking to other people. But anyway, majority of you guys out there have left some really positive, really nice comments as well, which I really do appreciate. You know, it spurs us on for doing this. Like I said before, we don't make any money from these videos. It's purely just because it's something that we do. You see that different in the dark colour? What a great difference it makes for that as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same with the purple or mauve, whatever colour you want to do it. So again, I'm putting a slightly darker colour on there as well. What it does, it lifts that colour, it gives that contrast on there, it changes how the piece looks as well. Now you can do whatever you want. If you want to start with the inside, start with the inside. I quite like most of the time starting with the outside, because while I'm doing this, what I'm doing is I'm thinking about what I'm going to do with the inside colours. At this point in time, I've still got no idea what colours I'm going to use, but what I'll do is I'll pick a pen and then I will go for it. I think what I'm going to do with this one is I'm probably going to start with a 3D in a bit. I'll do the character in a bit because I always like doing the characters and give the ink a time to settle. What I do on the character as well, a lot of the colours with the skin colours and things like that, I tend to use the chameleons just because the colours layer really strongly on there, and they look really cool. So what I'm doing is I'm just lining that and obviously just creating a smaller bubble inside. You've seen me doing this before. I think the first video that I did, I use this similar sort of effect on it as well. Sometimes I'll put like architecture in the background. Sometimes I'll just use black and then put some dots on it and give it an opinion, give it look as if it's got some stars on it as well, which is always a nice thing to do. Again, you do whatever you want to do, but if you see now, it's just got that little bit of extra structure on there now, and that extra colour just gives it a bit more depth and lifts it off. Let's have a look, here we go. So that's what I'm going to do with that outline. So if you look at that now on there, you can see it's all starting to pop a little bit now. It's starting to grow a little bit. You can start seeing a little bit more detail in there. So with doing that as well though, you can see the detail of the piece and the drawing in there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the chameleon pens. So obviously the chameleon pens, you normally can mix them in this colour chamber and it gives a faded look, but what I use these for is I just use these for the initial skin colour. So I always leave around the eyes, because what that does is it gives you the normal white of the eyes. As I've said before, oh jeez, so I've got a bit of runnage on the black there. So the thing sometimes with the chameleons is that depending on what pens you use, they can affect the black. So I've just got a little bit of run on there, but I can fix that. I'll show you how I'll fix that in a minute. Enjoy time, I don't worry about it. It just gives a different feel to the skin texture. You can give it as a, you can put it down as a shadow. So all I'm doing there is I'm just colouring that initial colour on there like that. So building that colour. So what I'm using here is I'm using Nude NU00 because it's just a nice clean starter on there as well though. So I'm going to leave that to dry for a little bit, because if I put the colour on straight over the top on there, it might bleed a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the Spectrum Noir, and I'm going to use the GT3 and just lay that colour on there like that. So if you look, what I'm doing all the time with this is I'm starting off with me lighter colours, filling those lighter colours in, and then I'm going to build up the darker colours afterwards. Now again, I know there could be a structure on, oh well, your shading should be like this, and whatever, and you'll get the real art buffs out there that'll tell you to do the colours out there. But what it is, it will be what it will be, and I will do it how I like it, and I use it because it's my style. So I'm just trying to zoom in a little bit, but I think I'm absolutely fine with that. So as you can see, I've got the lighter colours down. Now I'm going to work on the 3D. So what I'm going to do with the 3D is I am going to do the 3D in shades of brown. So what I like to do is, if you look at why I see 3D, what I try and do is I try and do the same colours but contrast the shades on it. So again, I have no plan about what I'm doing. I'm just literally filling these in. So you might sit there and think, oh god, that brown looks a bit weird with with the pinks and the blues on the outside of it. But I've got confidence that when it all comes together, that it'll look really, really good. And again, you could probably leave your 3D. You could actually leave your 3D white if you wanted to. Doesn't really matter. You do whatever you want. So you colour whatever colours you want. Now, sometimes with this, I've noticed that I've missed little bits off. So if I look, I've just found a bit there where I missed. So go back in, fill that bit in. I'm going to fill that colour in there because that's a small piece. So again, what I'm doing is I'm just randomly picking sections. So because I don't want it all the same colour or the same shade, because I want it to have a contrast. And to be honest with you, it's purely because I like it like that. Sometimes I will colour it all exactly the same colour. Oh, shit, there's another bit there that I've missed. See, I keep finding these bits where I've missed it. There you go. There's another bit there that I keep missing. This is the thing I find quite often with this, because I'm a bit of a sloppy colourer, because I like getting things done and I like doing it quickly. I quite often miss it. You look on the Roadman video, as I was saying, for yet again when the camera turns itself off again. The Roadman video, there's actually a piece that I've missed on there, so have a look again at it and just put in the comments where you can see where it's been missed, because I didn't realise until I'd watched it a couple of times just to review it all and see what we can improve on it, that I'd missed a bit on there. I have coloured it in since, but at the time I didn't even realise, which is quite funny. But again, it's your work, so you can do whatever you want. If you miss something, you miss something. If you do something wrong, a lot of time, because it's your work, nobody needs to know. You don't have to tell them. And sometimes those mistakes add some interesting features to a piece as well. So again, so what I'm using here is I'm using a fairly rusty looking brown, just to give it a little bit of a shading on there. But what you'll find once you start building up these additional colours and additional shades of brown, you'll get a really nice, it's almost like just a really quality feel for it. And I think sometimes when you just do the one colour, it doesn't give it the same. So that's the GB9. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go on to the TM5, which is more of an orangey brown. So if I put that against that, slightly darker, and you'll see what I mean now. So you get that thicker, more of a rounded feel to it. So again, if I put that darker next to the light, put the titch on there, you see what I mean? It just gives it a little bit of a like a shadow almost. Now one of the things I quite like doing as well occasionally is just going bananas with the colours. So okay, I'm using all browns on here, but if you want to use pinks, greens, yellows, whatever colours you want to do on that, then give it a go. Because you know what, you might find you give something a go and you might think actually that works. You know, sometimes you'll do something you think it looks absolutely terrible and you'll hate it, but you know what, if you give it a go and you don't like it, don't do it again. But if you do it and it looks really good, do it some more. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give it a little bit of breathing space on there though, so I'm not over saturating certain areas with the same colour. So if I did all the same brown in the same location, what would happen is it would look too heavy and you'd lose that feel to it. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a really dark chocolatey brown on here, which is a really, really heavy brown, almost like a black. And again, I'm not going to use this colour too much, because I think what I'm going to do is if I put too much of this darker colour in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lose some of that structure. So these pens that I'm using, as I said, are the Spectrum Noirs. I love Spectrum Noirs. I just think for value for money, they're absolutely great. You get some really nice colour combinations on there as well. Like say you get the 24 packs, which are always a good price. If you live in the UK, I noticed the other day they were on sale in the range. So if you want to go and have a peek at there, they're worth having a look in there, because let's say if you're just starting out in the world of alcohol markers, they're absolutely great. You know, people often ask, how long do the pens last? Honestly, it just depends on how much you draw, really. You know, the thing with the Spectrum Noirs is they said they're refillable, but I've never actually seen the refills for them. I think there are certain points in the world where you can get the refills, maybe in America. I did notice when I was in Florida this year that there were some refills for certain as well. Another thing that Spectrum have just released as well is, if you're, especially for graffiti as well though, when you're doing your fades and you're doing your different colour combinations as well though, is they're doing a 3-part pen. So it'll have 3 colours that will contrast and work together. So you can start off with light, medium and then dark on there though, which is absolutely a cracking thing to do as well. So I've got those colours on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a slightly, almost like a thorny colour, like an orangey light brown now. So again, if you see that now, what I'm saying with the different colours, it gives it a different feel to it when you use the different layers on there though. So if you use one colour, it can be a bit blocky and it can just look a bit heavy, whereas using the different colours on here and the different shades, what you're doing is you're giving it that little bit of space to breathe. And if you look, it just, I just think it looks really good. Okay, you've got a few bits where it's gone over the lines there. Yeah, whatever, I don't care. I'll soon sort that out, and I'll show you how to sort that out in a minute. So again, I don't take too much time with a lot of these. I will just keep layering and layering and layering. I work fairly quickly. because again, like I said before, I'm quite impatient with stuff like this though, and I always want to finish it and get to the next one. So if you look at the character now though, is those colours now have flattened up now. So another thing I'm going to do as well though, so I've got that bit there and I've got that bit there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go completely off piece with this one, and I'm going to use like a darky orangey colour. It's like an orangey brown. So again, I'm only using a little bit of it. So I'm not doing it right across the board with that. I've only done a couple of things. So I'm just going to give a quick scan on there though. So every bit of 3D there is coloured on there now. So if you look at that from depth wise, the background is starting to look good. Your inside is looking clear and fresh and easy to look. Sorry, I'm just putting the pencil back so it does my head in when they're all out. So again, you've got that feel to it, but at this stage you might be thinking, oh, I want to do a bit more. You know, do as much as you want. If you want to meddle with it and add stuff on it, just do it. But just remember, if you meddle too much, you can't always take it back. So be careful, and less is more. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just colour this fella's hair here, and then I'm going to use this to just give it a little bit of a highlight session on here, and I'm just going to pull out certain areas. Again, this is all about just giving the piece a bit of depth. So a bit on there, a bit on the eyebrows, and do that so as if they've got a bit of a shine on his head. So you're looking at this and thinking, oh my god, that colour's really dark. It will soften down. It will soften down, and those colours will just blend really nicely. So you see there's a bit of a bleed with your purple onto the character's face and things like that. Just don't worry about it. Absolutely don't worry about it. It's your work. You know what you're doing. So it's up to you. So again, I'm going to use a chameleon dark green on here, just to give those greens a bit of combination. I'm going to leave a bit of white on here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the sense of a depth of colour on there though. So I do tend to do very similar things on this as well though, but again, this little additions of the dark colours and the lighter colours and things like that though, when I've gone back and looked through my earlier old black books, I've been doing this since about 1980 odd. It seems really, really strange. Now, so if I look at the centre and I think, okay, what am I going to do with the centre? I've got lots of pinks, I've got lots of greens, I've got lots of browns. What I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to do this with a fade. So I'm going to do two colours. So I'm going to do a line on here like this. So do your line all the way across. So this colour, I've just looked at my colour pens on there and thought, okay, what colour am I going to use? And what I've done is I thought, right, okay, I'm going to use this grey. It actually looks like a bit of a browny colour. So as you see this, you might think, oh, that's a bit weird in the background. Those little colours coming through the back are literally just the blobs from the sheets I've got underneath to stop the paper bleeding. So again, so if you see there, you can see it coming through. Ignore it. You've got to be careful with alcohol pens. If you press too hard, those colours will come through the paper because the alcohol saturates the paper. So again, I've probably been doing this for maybe 45 minutes, 50 minutes. So it's not a huge amount of time. Again, if you want a hobby where you're gonna, pass your time and give you some thinking space and things like that, though, it's a perfect thing to do. And again, it's all good practice for getting better all the time. So again, this is just you do what you feel. So if you want to colour the top with pink and do the bottom with purple, you will get people say, well, the colours don't match on the colour scale or the colour wheel, whatever you want to call it. Whatever. Excuse me, coughing. Alcohol pens are quite strong, but I like it. water again. You got these little bits of bleeding and things like that. Don't worry about it at the moment, because I'll show you how I end that as well. So you've got a nice colour on the top. So what do you want to do on the bottom? Do you want to put another grey, or do you want to have something that's going to contrast? So what I'm going to do, because I've done purple in the bottom, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a nice purple on that. This colour is actually, if you look at it, is grey on the pen. But that's the only thing I would say with Spectrum wise, the colours don't actually match the pen caps. So that's why you use your little bit of paper. So again, colour down. So if you look at these pens as well though, the actual way they colour is brilliant, because of the chisel nib is accurate. It's fast to colour with as well, which I really like, because I hate spending hours and hours and hours doing stuff. I like doing a piece, doing it, getting on with it, close it on. If you look at my Instagram page, you know, I've got more work that I can post on there, because I've got books and books and books. I've got pages and pages and pages of stuff that I do, because I'm always doing something. I'm terrible when I'm at work, if I'm on a call for dawdling and doodling and things like that though, because I just you know, some people do scribbles, I do letters. Okay, so if you see that now, you've got quite a light colour at the top, and then you've got your darker purple at the bottom. But again, we're gonna make that lift when we add some more colours to it, and we add some more shades to it. So again, it's all about making those colours work and making those colours fit with each other. So if you look at this, the way the spectrums work with this paper, they almost give a colour as if it's been printed rather than it's been coloured, because sometimes you'll see markers and you'll get like little lines, like here we can see some lines on the page. To be honest with you, those lines do my head in. I absolutely hate seeing those lines on there though. But again, if you're practicing and you're just starting off and you can't afford it, you know, the more expensive pens you will get that though. But you know, if you want to get rid of that as well, get a colour pencil, go over with a colour pencil, and what your colour pencil will do is fill those lines in, and again it gives you that contrasting colours. So the thing with this is you could be quite tempted now to start layering over with this purple. What will happen is, because it's wet, as soon as you start putting another colour over the top of it, it's going to start to bleed and it will start to leak. So again, it's giving that pen and that ink time to breathe and settle and just relax itself on the page, because if you go over it straight away, you will just lose some of that colour, and what will happen is you'll end up with a blob. So if I show you on here, so if I colour that there like that, it's probably the wrong kind of paper there, and if I colour over with a blue, it's leaking slightly, and what will happen is that as that goes, it will leak. So if you imagine having like a bowl of water and putting a blob of ink on the top of it, and you can see it moving out. So if you look at that now, you've got your light brown, you've got your purple, you've got a bit of leakage on here. Don't worry about it, I'll show you how to fix that in a minute. And then you've got some tops on here as well though. You've got your contrasting colours fitting in here though, so it's all looking strong and everything's looking good. What I can do now while I'm waiting for them is, what I would normally do at the end is I would put the white around the outside. But what I'm going to do is, because this is quite wet and it's still time to settle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the white on the outside of it first. So you just get your gel pen. So these are called jelly rolls. They're only a few pound. In fact, I actually got these when I was in America this year, and they were really cheap, but really, really good quality. Sometimes I will use a Posca white at 0.5mm tip, because again, it's just a nice, great colour. But the thing with the Poscas, make sure you give them a good shake, because otherwise you just end up with like this milky water that comes out, which is a bit insipid and it just leaks all over the page. So you've got to really give it some welly. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just going around the outside of the piece with this white pen. So if you look at what it does, is it just defines it. You're also tidying up those lines on the outside, Hi, sorry about that. I'm having some real issues with my camera, so if we missed a few seconds, I'm really sorry. So again, what I've done is I've just gone around the outside with a white pen, and I put a few little dots on here to give the image of having some stars on there as well though. So again, it's a simple tip. What it does is it really gives a bit of a decent contrast to your actual overall piece. So what I've done now is, because I've got these light browns on the top of it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over with a different brown. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use a brown that I haven't used before. Let me just try and see what I've got on the colour. So for those of you who know, I love a good dot. I think dots are really look great on a piece as well. I think it's a nice simple way of colouring. It's really effective, and I think it can cover a whole multitude of sins. So that bit there had a bit of a fuzz on it. So even if you look in here though, they're quite fuzzy, but again, I quite like that because it just fills it nicely. It gives a nice clean look on it. So again, this thing with this piece is I'm not going too complicated. So, you know, if you're just starting, you know, you can use this whatever way you want to do. If you want to use coloured pencils, use coloured pencils. You know, you use whatever medium you want. You know, I hope if you want to, you know, copy some things and give it a go. I know there's all this thing within the graffiti community about, you know, people being toys and biting and all that sort of stuff, but you know what, who cares? I don't know anybody who hasn't at some point looked at somebody's work and thought, oh, I like that idea, or that letter looks good, I might change that letter and things like that. There's a difference between getting inspired and there's a difference between completely ripping off people's work. But again, if you do copy some bits or you take something from inspiration, just give that person a bit of a shout out. Just say, you know, I used this because I thought it was a really good idea, or I really like that, and put their name on it. Just say thank you for you know, using their work. It's always a nice thing to just give somebody a nod and say thank you. So because I've got the purple at the bottom, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a nice bright pink, because with the purple coming through, what it will do is it will tone that down. So if I use this pink on its own, it's really loud. But what you'll see is, because of the way the inks work, it will start bleeding through a little bit and it will create a slightly different colour. And again, it just looks, I think it looks really nice. And the other thing as well you can do occasionally as well is put a little bit of this purple in the top, this pink in the top. Not much, but just a little bit, because then what you're doing is you bring the two sides together a little bit. So you're creating a bit of interest at the top, and obviously you're adding a bit of colour to the bottom. So I'm sorry about the cameras being a bit crap on this today, but hopefully this has given you some idea of what I do. You know, I'd love to hear whether you think this is a good idea, whether you want to hear more of these talky videos. If you don't like it, that's absolutely fine with me. I'm happy not to do them, because it's quite a battle to keep talking for this length of time on something, and obviously do it at the same time. But hopefully you've looked at this and thought, ah, right, okay, I see how that's done, I like that, and see whether you can pick it up and pull it up. If you look on the Instagram page as well though, so if you follow @MinkyGraffiti, you know, if you do anything and you do come up with something really good, send me a picture or share it, tag us in on it, because you know what, it's always nice to see. I've had some really good stuff shown on there. I've just done some exchanges with a guy called Lism. I'm just in the process of putting a pack together for him, because he's just done an amazing pack. I've shared with Psych2, who's a guy out in Australia, does lots of sticker work in that, and he sent me an amazing pack. Who else have I done? I've just done Evokes as well, a guy called Mace, and again, that was really good fun. I like doing letters that I don't normally do, because I hate the letter L, hate the letter S, hate the letter P, because they just do my head in. But again, it was quite good fun to do it. So what I'm going to do here now, this is the bit that you see at the end. So you can sit there and think, okay, I'll leave that, I like that, it looks nice. So what I'm going to do now is, I've got, oh shite, excuse me, just knocked the camera. you look at video 1, you can see me knocking the camera off as I am quite clumsy. So I've got a chameleon, so I've broken it down, so obviously it's the same pen, but I've just taken the end off it. And this is a light grey. And what I'm going to do is I am going to put some grey over where the overlap is. And what that does is it gives it a 3D effect, so it gives it the look as if the pieces are floating on top of each other. I'm going to do those little highlighty bits there like that. And again, you're going down the edge of that piece there like that, and just filling that in there like that. So every time everything overlaps, so like there, you're just running that line down there, and again you're doing that line down there, a little bit on there and there, and then what that does, so when you see it finally and it's all coming together, you will see that looks like it's overlapping. And it gives it a little bit of texture. So again, I'm just going to do these little bits here. Okay, tiddly bit there. Again, just a little bit of a shadow there. Again, you think, okay, I'll leave it there, I'll finish it there. But another thing, if you look on my bits as well, what I do is I just do a little bit of an arc on the 3D there like that. So what this colour does as well is it's light enough to just give it a bit of a shadow, but what it does is it actually leaves the main colour underneath, and what it does is it just gives you that little bit of a highlighted look about it. So you're only giving a nod to say that something's got a bit of 3D on it. There we go. Okay. So if you see what I mean, so when you're doing this as well, it's all about just building the colours, but it's about making mistakes, doing it, see what works for you. If it works, keep it. If it doesn't, get rid of it, or adapt it and try something different, because that's how you get better. I think what happens is when you look at Instagram and you see all this work and you see all these people on the internet, you think, oh god, that's really good, I'd love to be able to do that. And I think the tendency now is, especially with social media and things like that, is people want to do stuff and just get good, but what they don't want to do is they don't want to put the time and the effort in, and they think that there's this magic wand that you just press and you just, you know, if you could download an app and just suddenly be great at something, that's what people do. They don't want to try and they don't want to practice, they don't want to make mistakes, you know, because they're frightened about showing something that's a bit rubbish. Listen, show it. If your work's rubbish, show it, because what will happen is it will also show you development. You know, I've seen people who've done some work, and you know, the first bits are probably not as good as they could be, but then you see 6 months time, you look at their work and you think, Jesus, that's brilliant. And it's because they put the effort in and they put the time in, and they've practiced and they've made mistakes, and you know, they've actually had some advice from some, you know, I get people asking me, you know, what do you think? And I'm always a bit cautious about giving people advice because I'm not an expert, but if I can give somebody a bit of direction, then I'm quite happy to do that. So again, I'm just going to put a little bit on here like this. What that does, it just gives that a bit of contrast. I'm going to do it a bit down that side. Okay. Now, again, I could leave this, but I actually think what this is probably missing on here is maybe a little bit of a highlight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do some thick highlights on this one. So I'm going to do them like a bit of a squiggly highlight, because I don't want them too perfect. And you're just doing it from one side. So if it comes over here, you want it on the right. If your light's coming from that side, you do it on the left. The problem is with doing these highlights, sometimes you can do them and look amazing, and sometimes you look at it and you think, God, I should have bloody left that. This is one of those occasions where I think maybe I should have just left it, but I think because I'm just showing you what I'm doing, I'd rather show you the highlight and then you can make your mind up whether you want to use them or not though. But I think possibly it might have been better without the highlights. And then what I'll do is I'll show you an old school highlight on this as well, which is something I still quite like doing. So all your highlights doing really is giving it the appearance of having like a lacquer finish, like a shiny finish to it. So you're just picking off small areas on there, you're not covering the whole thing, you're just literally highlighting some things. If you do it on the lighter areas, it doesn't always show up so much, but if you do it on the darker areas, it will come up looking nicely. So again, just little lines, just to give the impression as if the light's bouncing off it. And I'll do the same on here. I'll do more of that. So one of the things you can do on here as well is you can give the look as if there's like rasp of light doing on it. So again, it's just a quick cross on there, and then you fill the middle in as well though. So we'll do one on there, one on there. Okay,